out, hi, right? It's cold and yet everyone is out, so we're happy about that. I am Tanya Baptiste. Why does that sound like that? Is this better? I'm Tanya Baptiste, the Director of Guidance. I have met many of you and those of you who I haven't, and it's great that you're here tonight. This is a night that we felt was definitely worth you coming out and just having FaceTime with some of the counselors just to talk about how do you build a profile while you're in high school, right? It's not a marketing strategy. It's really looking at your interests and looking at who you are as a student and a learner and figuring out how to optimize those things and take full advantage of everything that this high school has to offer. This high school, as you know, is one of the most resourced high schools in the nation. If we just took you on a tour of everything that's going on here and that's happening, you'd be even more impressed than what you probably already are. So our goal is really to make sure that our kids know what's available to them, talk to them about how to take advantage of those things and how to figure out what they like to learn and what they like to do. And so we call this like a building your profile evening, right? Tonight we're gonna hear from 3 of your counselors that are a part of the counseling department. So tonight we have Ms. Brown, we have Ms. Totillo, and we have Ms. Santos. And those are your resident experts for the evening. Most of us, all of us have at least 10 or more years of experience in doing this. So we are technically 9th and 10th graders every year, right? We go through this process. So with that being said, we're just gonna talk about, if we can click, thank you. 3 major overviews of what we're gonna talk about tonight is self-reflection and assessment, right? What does that mean? It's important to reflect always, and I'm talking to my students who are in the audience tonight. Reflect on your strengths, your weaknesses, who you are as a learner, what are you doing, how well are you doing, what do you need to work on, what do you need to do better on, what are you killing? Like, those are the things that you should be thinking about. Being informed and resourceful, how to get information, right? It's not about someone always feeding you information. It's how do you learn how to go seek out information, be resourceful, see what's around you. How do you access that information? It's being proactive and not expecting someone to do something for you, but going after it and getting it for yourself. And then engagement, be involved. As much as I talked about briefly the course offerings, we have over 50 clubs, athletics, like there is anything you want to do, you can do here. So we want to make sure that you're doing that. And then the results are, not like I said marketing, but the results are why we get into some of the best colleges in the nation, why we are still ranked as a top performing high school, and it's because of that. So that's my spiel. It's not my show for the night. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Brown and Ms. Santos, and enjoy the evening. And we'll also open up to questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Baptiste. And hello, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you, parents and students alike. I'm Ms. Santos, as Ms. Baptiste said, and Happy New Year. I think we can still say that at least for a couple more days. But I say Happy New Year because what a better time to talk about self-assessment and self-reflection, right? It's such a great time of year to do that. Every new calendar year, really every new school year, but also every new quarter is like a fresh start. It's like a clean slate. And it's a good time to kind of sit back and think and reflect. Now, as parents, as adults, we know how to do this. But as students and children, we might still be learning how the process of self-reflection and self-assessment. So how do we really do that? So let's look at objectively reflecting and critiquing our progress and skills. The last time that we met with our 9th graders and 10th graders was at the end of quarter 1, beginning of quarter 2. At this point in the school year, as you know, we're at the end of quarter 2, beginning of quarter 3, and beginning of a new semester, right? So what you want to do is you want to, as adults, we might struggle with this too, is actually teach your children and students how to set aside time, okay, to actively reflect and assess on the past quarter, the past semester, okay? Ask yourself questions. What kind of questions can you ask yourself? What goals did I set for myself the last time Ms. Santos or Ms. Brown or Mr. Taylor or whoever your counselor is met with me? How did I progress over this last quarter two with those goals? Which ones did I actually meet? Which ones am I still working towards? And maybe what skills am I still working on trying to improve? Okay? So that's the actual process of trying to reflect and assess. In that process, you want to identify weaknesses, gaps, and of course your strengths, because all of those things are important to understanding yourself. So one of the tools that we utilize, and maybe some of your children came home and told you about it, but usually 9 times out of 10 they don't. We actually either pull them out of the classroom or push into a particular classroom and do a lesson with them. And we use a tool called Naviance. So for those of you who might not be familiar with Naviance, it's an electronic platform that we use in the counseling center, and it's really a tool for students to learn about themselves. And as underclass students, 9th and 10th grade students, we're focusing more on that self-exploration piece. So for 9th graders, we did an assessment that was a strengths explorer, right? So we've actually already started this reflection process with your children and trying to help them identify their strengths, right? So ask yourself, what are the things that I do well without much effort, right? Because those are the things that are most likely your natural talents and your natural abilities. And then what are the things that maybe don't come as easy? For our 10th graders, we pushed into the classrooms and we talked about personality and how personality connects to our interests and perhaps our skills and even careers in different career fields that might be a good match. So sit with your kids. Ask them about Naviance. At this stage in the game, as parents, you won't have a Naviance account, and that's okay. That doesn't come until later on in your child's high school career, usually in their junior year, okay? But they have an account, and they can log in, and they can show you what their results were. And sometimes they can even take the assessment again if they felt like, well, we were in the classroom and I felt a little rushed, and maybe I want to do that one again. Some of them you can't take again, but some of them you can. So maybe they want to sit down when they have more time and do it and then go over it with you so you can see for yourself maybe their areas of strength. Recognize and seek ways to improve skills, okay? So after we've kind of identified what our strengths and areas of improvement are, how can we go about actually tackling them, right? What resources in the school are available to us? I don't know how many 9th and 10th graders we actually have out there, but if anybody isn't too shy to speak up, what sort of resources do we have in the school to help you if maybe you're having trouble in a particular area? Your guidance counselor, absolutely. So, of course, yes, you can certainly come and seek out an appointment and come see one of your guidance counselors and talk through it. Who else in the building could you go to if you need a little extra help? Hint, hint. Extra help, right? If there's a particular subject area or a concept, in a certain unit you're struggling with, go to extra help after school or before school, depending on when your teacher has it, okay? That's a resource to you. Who has a lunch period or a free period in their day? Okay, I see some hands. There's study centers in our building for every subject area. Utilize that time. You can also go to the library, maybe study with a buddy, right? Utilize that time to get the support that you need, okay? So there are resources out there, but as a student, you need to be learning and practicing the skills to seek out ways to improve those skills, okay? Now, at this point in the school year, it's all about scheduling the month of January. So create a course schedule each year that reflects your strengths, those natural talents and abilities. So what this means is, if you know or you've experienced over the last 2 quarters of being a freshman, or maybe even a year and a half if you're a sophomore at this point, that math, I'll use as an example, is an area that's not your strong point, right? And maybe quarter after quarter you have to work hard or you struggle a little bit. Does that then mean that you should go pick the highest level math class, self-select into the highest level math class that you can take, right? Maybe just because your friends are doing it or tell you should do it or what? No, right? You're not setting yourself up for success. So I'm also going to make a little public service announcement. We know recommendations came out yesterday, and the kids get all excited and they're talking, and what did you get recommended for, and what, and they go home and they get you all excited, right? And so all the emails are starting to flood in. Just take a beat, take a deep breath, and use this as an opportunity to sit with your child, go over the recommendations, okay? See what they are. You may or may not agree with all of them. You may or may not understand all of them. Maybe one of them is missing. Sometimes that happens too, right? So who's the best person to go to first? Of course, yes, we're resources, but the recommendations come from who? Teachers. This is my group over here. So who should you go to first? Your teachers, right? If you have any questions, concerns, whatnot. There's also department chairperson for every subject area. So, and that information is, easily found on the website as well. So they are a resource to you as well because they are going to be experts in that subject area. Of course, you can come to us as your counselors and we'll give you the information that we have and we know, but when you have really curriculum-based questions and nitty-gritty questions about the finite differences between each class and how they're taught, the department chairperson is really the best person to have a conversation with, okay? So create a course schedule each year that reflects your strengths. So not just in your core subject areas, but also in your electives. Like your electives are that part of your schedule where you get to really have more of a choice and choose. And as Ms. Baptiste was saying, we have such a wealth with the resources and opportunities that we have at Roslyn High School. I mean, we have an incredible business department, which we're known for. We have a Project Lead the Way engineering program. That students get involved in early on. We have a science research program. We have an amazing art department and music department. So there's so many areas that you can really look at your strengths and talents and interests and dive into that in the classroom, but also extracurricularly as well through clubs and organizations and things like that. Okay, last but not least, select courses that you can manage with all of your other commitments, right? So we're very well aware that we talk a lot about academics, right, in these presentations, but that's not all school is about, and that's not all students have on their plates every day, right? It's not the only responsibilities. I just touched on, extracurriculars like clubs, athletics. Athletes have practice every day after school. So when you're thinking about your course selections or your course recommendations, another sort of public service announcement is that understand that your teachers of all the different subject areas are they're not communicating with each other about what they're recommending you for. They're looking at their particular subject area. So just because you may have been recommended for all honors courses or maybe even all AP classes for your junior year doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the right balance for you. Because those of you who may have tried an honors course this year or are thinking about an AP course next year, which will even be a step above, know and understand the amount of time and attention that those courses take in your outside of the school day schedule, right? So you have to think about, because you're an expert on yourself in your own schedule, right, outside of school, what's going to be a good balance for me? And if I'm thinking about my strengths and talents, maybe I'm just using an example, maybe I'm not a STEM student. Do I want to push myself across the board and then struggle with balancing my time for other extracurricular things maybe I want to invest myself in too? Or do I maybe want to push myself in those humanities subjects like English and social studies because I love them and I'm really passionate about them and I'm good at them and those are my natural talents, and then maybe be in a more appropriate fit class that I can manage with everything else that I want to do on a daily basis. So that's really what all of this means. okay? And in terms of self-reflection and assessment as we enter the scheduling phase for next year. Can we go on? There you go, perfect. Be informed and be resourceful. So there's a lot of information on this page. There's also a lot of links, and I'm fairly certain Ms. Baptiste is gonna send this presentation out at the end of the day, if not probably tomorrow. So we don't need to click into every single one, but just understand that there's a lot of information that's available to you. You wouldn't believe how many emails that we field that we ultimately end up just directing them back to the website or a certain page and so on and so forth. So understand that all of this information is at your fingertips. There's a couple things I want to point out, like obviously the school calendar has general dates and school breaks and all of that stuff that we need to know in order to, function with our families. But there's this 9th grade essential guide. So 9th graders, so as 10th graders, you got this last year, 9th graders, you got this year at orientation, or were introduced to it, and it's on our website. But it's really great because it breaks down sort of area by area, like the key things that you need to know. Like, who do I go for if I'm having issue with my ID, I lost my ID, or I need a locker, or XYZ, or what's the attendance policy? So it's really like a quick go-to guide for students, and even more so parents, to help you get where you need to go. There's the Counseling Center webpage. So that webpage, Ms. Baptiste has her glamour shot on there. She loves that. But it has all the need to know, go-to counseling information that's going to help you get through the next 4 years. You'll probably be on there a lot when you're a junior and senior going through your college process. And then there's Naviance, which we already talked about. So just understand all this information is right at your fingertips. Utilize it. Go there and seek out the information first, because then I guarantee when you come to us as your counseling team, you'll have richer and deeper level questions that we can start to dive into with you. Okay? That's all my time. I'm going to introduce Ms. Brown now, so I was eager to come up here. So thank you for listening. It's, again, lovely to see you all.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to jump into, Ms. Santos touched on the academics, kind of being reflective, what's that next year's schedule look like. I'm going to jump on getting involved and being engaged. It's probably the most funnest, I'm going to say, the most exciting part of high school, right? So you're diving into your academics, you're pushing yourself throughout the day, and then it comes the end of the day and you get to look forward to something. What is that? Is it a club? Is it athletics? Is it a research program that you're in? Is it a volunteer experience? Everybody's experience should look different. So in 9th grade, we encourage you to get involved in as much as you can. We have flexibility with our athletic programs, so our JV teams allow you to be in clubs, and they kind of are a little flexible with the timing of practices, so you can do a little bit of both. And then in your sophomore year, we're like, okay, maybe you did 3, 4, maybe 5 clubs. Who knows how many clubs you did in your 9th grade year. But in the 10th grade year, we might look for you to start to become more vested, right? That means maybe you're not splitting your time as much between so many clubs and activities, and you're starting to engage more in 2 or 3. You're building your opportunities in that club or that program outside of school. So our club, like we said before, we have over 50 clubs in the high school, and then there are outside opportunities, even outside of in the Roslyn community for community service. Some students choose to work. Some students have home responsibilities. So whatever that looks like for you, we want you to continue to engage here in the school in your academics, and then start to make the connections outside the classroom, whether it's in clubs, athletics, or activities. So, and it's never too late. Sometimes I have juniors coming into me being like, I've been doing this club and that club, but I'm looking for something deeper. So we start to explore. We have conversation about, well, what does that look like for you? What are you actually looking for? And we start connecting the pieces. Well, I've been doing this club and I've been doing that club, and well, what about something that might connect the two of them? I've had students talk about, coming to me just recently, I want to get into research. I never thought I was interested in research, but I took this psychology online class over the summer, and it was really interesting, and now I'm taking AP Psych, and I think I want to do a little research this summer. So we started looking at programs online, and it was helping him just go online and research different programs at different schools that might offer that next step for him in research with the psychology field. So, but here we have the clubs, the activities. 9th and 10th graders, one of the big things you should be aware of is the 40 hours of community service, okay? Because that connects in 2 ways. One, you need it for graduation, the 40 hours. But 2, if you are someone who is performing well in school, and you've heard a little bit about our National Honor Society, if your average meets the qualification for National Honor Society, you're going to have needed to complete those 40 hours of community service. They like to see it completed by the end of your 10th grade year. So that is something to keep in the back of your mind as well. Community service, for freshmen, you should have received it in August. It's called Volunteer Access, and you would log into it, and that's where you log your hours. For sophomores, you also got it at the start of 9th grade. If you cannot find it, go into your email and search for Volunteer Access, and you should be able to find it. If you can't, come down to the counseling center or see Mr. Lazarus, and we can help you, okay? All right, so find something meaningful. I think that's the biggest piece of it. A lot of the times we get asked questions, what should I do? I think my son or daughter needs to add another club. What do you think they should do? Well, what are they interested in? Right? It's not what I think they should do, it's what they think they should do. Because we want it to be meaningful, because when it's meaningful, they engage more. They get more involved, they take more ownership, they might take leadership opportunities on at some point, and they start to grow in it. I'm going to use myself as an example. I could probably use a ton of students, but I'm going to use myself because I feel like it's fair. When I was in high school, I did volunteer work with the CARE. So that was like the Cancer Awareness Club in my school. In my senior year, I helped organize 2 24-hour dance marathons, and we gifted Make-A-Wish Foundation, through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, 2 trips for 2 young children who had cancer at the time. When I got to college, I found a very similar club and continued it. When I got out of college, I volunteered from the time I was 21 till about, let's see, my daughter was born, so that was 2015, for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, where I was working with their endurance event teams, helping people train for events and fundraise for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And then I switched over, and many of you may have heard of the Student of the Year campaign. Okay, so that's through the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So I volunteered to help them get into school. So I found something in high school that was meaningful, that I engaged with, and it has kind of transcended throughout my life, right? So that's what we kind of want to see, because we're building things that we want our students to continue. That's natural, that's innate. So we find our students that do the best, that are happy at the end of college and happy going into college and high school. They have found activities that they really, truly enjoyed. And they weren't something that they felt they were just checking off a checklist to do, right? Because just when we think we have a rubric that everybody wants to see, the colleges are going to change the rubric anyway, because they have different needs the next year. And that's always going to change, and we can't account for that. But if you find things that are meaningful to you, then your experience will be the most genuine, okay? So find something meaningful. Athletics. Athletics are a great opportunity. Not everybody's athletic. Not everybody's involved in athletics. With each year, sometimes, it changes where your level of commitment wants to go. So sometimes we have, like with our basketball program, we have a JV 9, and then it goes to the JV team where it's like combined. And then by the time you get to varsity, you kind of see like the number of kids participating dwindles. And when you get to college, it dwindles on who's participating. So not everybody's going to stay in athletics for the whole time, but it is a big time commitment. So finding that balance between how much I love being a part of a team and a sport, and then do I want to do clubs and activities? Some students do both, some don't want to. But we also have clubs that the athletes can be a part of that kind of works with that schedule. So AHA would be one of them. Okay, and we have some other things that run throughout the school day that allow leadership to grow there. Sign-ups and tryout dates, be aware of those. Okay, because there's a lot of the times that there's the medical paperwork, there's physicals that have to be in, so we want to make sure that you're aware of all that information and you're getting involved. Time commitment, as we've discussed many times, the time commitment for each sport is different. So I was a coach here at Roslyn. I coached cross country, winter track, and spring track. The time commitment for that is different than lacrosse. It's different than football. Okay, some of the runners, they run all 3 seasons. And they continue to train throughout the whole year. And sometimes they just do one, but it's still a big time commitment, because on a Saturday you could be at a meet for 5, 6, 7 hours, but for lacrosse you might be there for 2 or 3 hours for a game and then you're done. Okay, so the commitments are different, so be aware of that time commitment for each sport. And then work. Some students work. Some students have family commitments. That's just as important, because at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is what skills you have developed, what activities you engaged in, what did you build through that? Character, skills, qualities, how did you spend your time? So college admissions rep, when they're reading this profile, they're looking at how did this student choose to spend their time? How did they choose to dedicate their personal time after school? What's important to them? What do they value in their life? And that is shown through how they've spent their time. Okay? So I always like to say it's quality over quantity, and that quantity comes from being more engaged. You started out as just a member of the club. Then the next year, maybe you were the secretary, and you took notes at the meetings, and you helped out the advisor. And then the following year, you stepped up, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to be the treasurer this year. And then the next year, you volunteer for something else that they were doing. Oh, I'm going to be the vice president. I want to run for this position. And positions can be competitive here, we know that. But that doesn't mean you can't still engage. You don't have to have a position to show leadership. Okay? I want you to remember that. You don't have to have a position to show leadership. And even when you're filling out all that information on what you've done, talking about the description and how you've been a part of a club can show leadership without a title. Okay, and sometimes that's just as important. How you talk about the activities, when it asks about what's the most meaningful, and this is a very common question, what's the most meaningful extracurricular activity? You can write down and talk about that meaningful activity, and it doesn't have to be an activity that you had a leadership position in. It can just be an activity that you were really engaged in, and maybe you didn't take on leadership in that club because you were doing something else that didn't allow you to put in that extra time, but you showed up and helped set up for the bake sale. You showed up and helped your peers set up for another fundraiser that you guys ran or an event that you ran. So there's lots of ways to engage and show leadership in clubs and activities without having the actual title, okay? But then when it comes to work, I'm gonna go back to work because I actually have a student this year that came in tears in my office. It's the start of the senior year. She's like, I really haven't been in any clubs. I'm like, okay. So let's talk about what you've done. Well, she worked every day after school, from 3:30 to 7, every day, since the end of her sophomore year. And in the summer, she picked up more hours. And I said, well, what did you do? Let's talk about that. She got a raise. She got a higher level position. She took on more responsibility at the job. What did you use your money for? Oh, I helped buy my sister's track sneakers. She's in middle school on the track team. Oh, you did? Okay, that shows dedication. Well, what did you do when you got home from practice? I helped my mom with dinner. I helped get my younger sisters and siblings showered and ready for bed. I helped my brother with his homework. That all counts. So her resume may look very different than somebody else's, but it still has value in it, because that's how she spent her time. And we have students here, it runs the range of how students are spending their time. Okay? Research and apply. So like I said before, I had a student come in to me, hasn't been in our research program, but wanted to do research, right? So we've used the word research a lot tonight, right? And that can mean a lot of things. Researching the activities, researching the clubs, researching your interests. But you might also be interested in actually doing research. We did 8th grade presentations today, 8th grade going into 9th, and one of the kids was like, what exactly is research? And I said, it's what you're curious about, right? When you're curious about something, you might want to research it. A lot of us, we just hit Google and type in something. It's still a form of research, but there's a higher level of research that can be done. So he said, what's something you're interested in? And he goes, I don't know, I guess global warming. And I said, okay, you can research that. Research all the theories that are out there. There's a lot of different theories. You can do a study. Another student raised her hand. She goes, well, I want to know why when I go in the cafeteria, the boys all sit in one corner, the same corner, every day. And I said, okay, and where do you sit with your friends? Every day. She goes, well, in the same spot. And I said, okay, well, did you ever think why? And she goes, well, I didn't think that deep about it. And I said, okay, but you could do a study on the students. You could ask them questions, develop questions on why they sit there every day. Is it comfort? It's habit. So it was very interesting, because then I saw the wheels start turning. And I was like, that is also research. We have kids here that do similar research. We have kids that do research on homework. We have kids that do research on the effectiveness of extra help. We have kids that do research on a lot of different things, hard sciences to social sciences to behavioral sciences. So that is also another form of research. It can be done in school through our program. It can also be done outside of school. We have kids go to the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. We have kids do programs over the summer to do research. So you can always do research, okay? So that's what we're talking about here. Do your own research in order to get information that you need. And then there's research where you're really looking to go in depth into a topic. And then the time commitment. I think that's the biggest thing that we see here. Our kids want to do it all. They really do. They want to do all the hard academics, and they want to get as involved as they can and do as much as they can. And sometimes we see the scales tip. Sometimes we see kids that are putting so much time into the classroom that they're sacrificing being involved in some things. And then sometimes we see kids that are so over-involved in activities that we start to see the coursework that they took, we see their grades start to drop, okay? So we like to see the balance. We try to help the students keep the balance so that when you come out at the end, you've had an enjoyable experience and you've reached the most success that you can, right? So the balance with the activities that you're in and the balance of the academics. Okay, so those are the two. The biggest thing for me is the balance between the academics and the extracurricular. So now it's kind of like for our 9th graders, we're going to focus, and then we'll focus on the 11th graders. So we kind of went over the 3 effective steps for you. Okay, self-assessment, engage, commitment. Right? We talked about all these things that we want you to think about, and now how do we apply them? For our 9th graders sitting here, how do we apply looking ahead into 10th grade and planning what that looks like? And each year, this is what we really want you to do. We want you to assess where your high school GPA is. For 9th graders right now, and I'm going to show you an example in a minute, you only have a few courses that might be making that up, okay? We want you to look at your personal academic trends. Does anybody know what that might mean? A personal academic trend. Okay, so personal academic trend might be that I consistently succeed in my math and science courses at this level, right? And I always kind of go up and down in my social studies or my English classes, right? So that might be a personal academic trend. I'm really, really good in math and I can excel in the math content area. That's a personal academic trend. Okay? And as we start to build the transcript, you'll see the personal academic trends continue. What levels did you take? Can I take on more? Can I not take on more? You pay attention to your own personal trends. And then time management, what that looks like with it. Each year you have to do this. So I'm looking, how did I do? I took on this honors class this year. How did I manage all my time? How did it work for me? For 9th graders, I took a half of a course load of honors and a half course load of regions. Can I take on more next year? I joined these 3 clubs, and next year I'm thinking I'm going to join 1 more, or maybe I'm only going to stay in 2, but I'm going to take on some leadership in that one because I'm going to help with the advisor with some things. So what does my time look like outside the classroom? And one of the things I'm going to tell you to use when you're building your schedule and thinking about this is we have a course comparison right on the website, another resource. It actually gives you between Global 2, Global 2 Honors, AP Euro, what the difference in the curriculum is, and the depth and the amount of time expectation you can expect to spend each night. So for the Regions class, it might be 30 minutes. For the Honors class, more like 45. For the AP class, probably an hour or so. And I will tell you in the social studies classes, you should also pay attention to how strong of a reader am I? How fast do I read? Do I need to reread things after I've read it for a stronger understanding? That type of information is important when you're reflecting on, do I take that AP Euro class that they're saying on average is going to be about an hour a night? Because there's a lot of reading. And if I'm a slower reader, if I have to reread things twice, that means for me, that might be longer, right? So now I can account for how much time I'm going to need in these classes with my outside activities, okay? And then that's where the time management, you start to look at what that looks like for you. Involvement. This is where develop the interest. So 9th grade, you tried everything out. You went to a couple clubs, you didn't really know if you liked them, you tried a couple more, you stuck with those. In 10th grade, now you're saying, this is really what I want to do. I really enjoyed these clubs, and I heard more about this club throughout the year that I didn't get to because it conflicted with something else, and now I'm going to try that club out. So I'm dropping one and I'm picking up another because I'm a little bit more interested in it, but we're going to ask you to really start to develop those interests more. You've had a year to try everything on. Right? You're growing in high school and you're learning about yourself, and we're asking you to do the same thing with your activities. As you get to know yourself, as you develop these interests on a deeper level, start to show the commitment more in your activities and in your academics. Look to devote time into leadership and activities. Consider jobs related to your academic or professional interests. You may or may not be able to do that in going from 9th into 10th grade, but sometimes, we still do have people that want to go into education. So over the summer, they might work at a camp, or sometimes they'll work at the JCC and do volunteer work. So there's a couple different ways you can do that, depending on what you're looking to do. Prepare. 10th grade is the first time we're going to introduce standardized testing. So for 9th graders, something you need to be aware of as you go into your 10th grade year is the fact that we are going to have an expectation that you take an SAT or an ACT in your junior year. So in 10th grade, we want you to be aware that for some, the PSAT might be an opportunity. Not all 10th graders should take the PSAT, but some, you might be ready for it, okay? You have to really evaluate where you are academically, what level math you're in, because that plays a big role. For students who are just going to be taking geometry in their 10th grade year, we don't always recommend it because they only have 1 year of a high school math curriculum under their belt, and the PSAT covers almost 3. So that could be defeating for someone who's doesn't really have enough. We have some students that are a little bit more advanced in math, so they might be prepared to take it. In the spring of your sophomore year, we offer a practice ACT, and information goes out about that. So these emails come out throughout the year, so you need to pay attention because we have registration deadlines, and then that's kind of it because other companies run them. College Board runs the PSAT and the SAT, but no, who's running our ACT practice test? Yeah, Princeton Review. So they set it up. So once registration, they say registration is over, that's when it is. So pay attention, but be aware that that's something you should be preparing for within the 10th grade year. And that kind of just gives you an idea of which test might be right for you, or your son or daughter. There's also practice tests online you can take so that you can start to think about, okay, in my junior year, what that preparation looks like. Okay, so that's something to be aware of in the 10th grade year. And then opportunities. Look to explore local college campuses or career programs. Maybe you don't have time to go start visiting schools or looking at places in Massachusetts or Delaware. Maybe you do, but you can even just go to a local college and walk around campus and get a feel for what it's like. You can also look for career programs. So in going into your 10th grade year, for the junior year, we offer students the opportunity to go to Barry Tech. It's a career prep program. They have a ton of activities, and we also offer a field trip. So if you're thinking your son or daughter might not, or not really sure if they're going to definitely go the 4-year track to a college or a 2-year track to a college, and you're thinking that there might be something they want to do that takes career training, we offer opportunities for that in high school. Okay, so we send those students, if they show interest, we send them to Barry Tech field trip. We also have LISA for the performing arts, which is another program for acting, directing, singing, and actually art, okay, and music. So those are other opportunities we have. So in the sophomore year, this is time to start thinking about those things so that you're prepared for it in your junior year. And then explore ways to have a meaningful summer. That looks different for everybody. It looks different for everybody. Some kids want to keep going, and they want to jump into research, or they want to jump into a college course. Some kids are like, I need a break. I'm going to summer camp. I want to still be a kid again, another year. And that's okay. Some kids are like, I'm going back to camp, but I'm going to be a CIT, and I'm going to show some leadership, and I'm going to learn how to help manage kids. I'm gonna learn different skills because I'm not on the camper side anymore. Now I'm gonna be a counselor in training. And I've been there. I ran a summer program for 17 years. And I had counselors who were high school kids, and I had counselors in training that were 8th and 9th graders. So I know what that looks like, and you can see the maturation in those kids. You can see them when they come to you and they're like, these 2 kids in my group they go at it every day. What do I do? So you have to help them. And they learn skills on how to manage people. It might be younger kids, but learning how to deal with people, whether they're kids or adults, is a good skill to have. So when it looks different, some kids get a job. They're coming in, they're looking for their working papers, and they want to get a job. They're working at the stores. They're going to work at, some kids, I've had kids go into catering over the summer. I've had kids work at the golf course. I had one kid, he wrote a story for his college essay about being a caddy. And it was the lessons he learned on the greens. It was probably one of the most insightful essays I've read in a long time. But it was all about the different lessons he learned because of the people he interacted with. He interacted with such a range of people, and he had to learn how to deal with them all. Some were very particular on how they want things done, how they wanted things done, and he had to know that, and he had to just do what they needed. And then some people wanted to chat with him. Some of them would ask his opinion. Sometimes just listening, he learned a lot. He certainly learned a lot about business deals, he said. So it was really, it was an insightful essay, and you just never know where you can learn and where you can grow. So summer opportunities, it looks different for everybody. Different for everybody, okay? Sometimes you can split what you're doing over the summer, and you can certainly always read a book. I encourage reading. I had a student once, she sent, I think it was a list of 42 schools of all the books she had just read in 1 year. And this was a student that she could walk into in the hallway because her head was in the book while she was reading. She would read walking around the hall. I don't know how she navigated the high school, but she did it, but she was always reading. And she just sent a list. It was like, something interesting about you. It was literally 42 books that she had read just from the start of her senior year to when she was, the end of her junior year to when she was sending in her applications. It was like a 6-month span. I was blown away. So it looks different for everybody. The point that we're trying to make today is really to just stay focused on you and what's important to you and what your strengths are and what your interests are. And for the parents here, helping your children build these profiles that are very natural. I have found 20-something years experience doing this, the kids that are the most successful and the happiest in the process are the ones that had the most genuine activities and experiences here in high school because they followed what they truly enjoyed. And then they weren't like, oh, I did all this for nothing. Or, I wish I would have done this instead of that. I listened to this person instead of that. They have to listen to themselves with some guidance. And sometimes they need some pushing because they're a little fearful and we want to push them to try something. And sometimes that's teamwork between us and the parents. But that's the gist of it. And if you just look up here, I mentioned before, that's what your 9th graders, who's a 9th grader in here? Or a 9th grade parent? That's what your kid's transcript looks like right now. That's what it looks like. It's got hardly anything on it. It's like a blank slate. So we're looking for them to build it. So this year, at the end of 9th grade, they're going to fill that top left corner. And that's going to create, so only what they've taken in 8th grade. Very few courses. Some of you may have 1, some of you may have 3 courses on there. But that's it. That's all that's on there. In 2 weeks, you might have a half a credit if you took health or half your elective right now. But that's it. You have so much opportunity to still build. If you're not putting your all into your academics, you have time to change that. They have midterms coming up and probably some exams next week. To end quarter 2, for our 9th graders, you can still replace your first quarter grade. If you came into high school not really ready to jump into the speed of Roslyn High School, if you still were a little unsure of what your study skills and the time that you needed to put into your academics, you still can finish this quarter strong and replace that first quarter grade. Because we have freshman forgiveness, right? So that is getting built right now. For our 10th graders in here, I'm going to hand you over to Ms. Totillo.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. So we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, preparing before you go into 11th grade. So we're really fortunate here that in the counseling department that we get to stay with our students all 4 years. So we really get to work with them through everything we're talking about, all the learning and self-discovery, doing those inventories, and every year they meet with us individually. We're going to start going into that at the end of this month, where they come down in their class, they come in and they meet one-on-one with us, and they discuss the courses they're thinking of taking for the next year. And in those conversations, we get to find out, what class are you liking right now? What class are you finding hard? Even if it's early for you, what do you think you might want to do, in your future or study in college? And through those conversations, we kind of get to point them in directions of classes that they may not be aware that we have here that will align with their interests. So when you're going into 11th grade, a lot of the thought has to be balancing everything again. So I find, and I think the other counselors will agree with me, 10th graders do, and you guys can tell us at this presentation next year if this is the case, they do have a difficult year in the beginning trying to plan the balance of their rigor. Because that's the first opportunity for some of them to select AP classes, and they don't always have a full grasp of the challenge of that curriculum, and so sometimes they may overshoot or overextend in their 10th grade year. So we hope that through these presentations and through our individual meetings and connections with your teachers that you're better balancing that rigor in your schedule so that you're not overextended. So when you're going into junior year, we look to do the same. What are your interests? And if you're doing well in those areas, if you're a math science student, let's make sure you're taking the most rigorous curriculum that you're able to handle in those subjects. If you're a humanities student, let's build the rigor there. And then balance the curriculum throughout with electives. There's also specific pathways for students who like art, or for students who like engineering. So we want to make sure that you're kind of connecting with us on that to make sure you're availing yourself of all the classes in the sequence. This is also the year where standardized testing becomes a little bit more important because it's going to be solidifying your college application pieces. So you'll have the opportunity to take the PSAT again. The PSAT is designed for juniors. It is a junior year test, so if you want to be eligible for the National Merit Scholarship Competition, you have to sit for the PSAT in your junior year to qualify and score within their standards. So again, you'll be able to take the PSAT, and then you're going to want to start taking the formal SAT or ACT. And students can choose to sit for both tests and see how they do, and pursue one format on multiple testing or pursue both. It's really individual. You'll work with your counselor when you get your scores back and make a testing plan. A lot of colleges, I'm sure you've been reading in the news, during COVID, many went test optional. Now many are kind of going back if they had tests before. Some are staying test optional and will stay test optional. So it's a mixed bag with what colleges require. So we always recommend that you at least do some official testing to have an official test record in case you might need it, because there are some schools that just require it. Athletes, the NCAA has been test optional. They have stayed test optional to this point, but again, every year, changes are happening, and so this way, if you've been testing along the way, you just have it if you need it. It's better to do it now than scramble last minute. So we have up here the main categories: evaluate, prepare, be vested, experiential learning, and letters of recommendation. So again, junior year, you'll be finishing out that last part of your transcript. Junior year courses will round out the GPA. So your application GPA to colleges consists of whatever classes in the 8th grade counted for high school credit, 9th grade classes, 10th grade classes, 11th grade classes. That makes your GPA. Colleges will look at senior grades, but it will not go into the GPA. So it is an important year in that sense, but it's important also to show growth. So it's not about what your program necessarily looks like, but it's about if you've shown growth over those years I've discussed, like 9th, 10th, 11th, if you have an upward trend. Sometimes things happen. And that's why letters of recommendation come into play. The counselors always write a letter of recommendation, and we'll get into this when you're ready junior year. We write a letter of recommendation for all our seniors. So if there's a special circumstance, we can absolutely address it in our letter. But this is why it's really nice that we work so closely together over the years, because our letters really are very personalized. And they kind of highlight that growth that you want a college to see in yourself. You do junior college paperwork that comes into us, that also highlights things that are important to you, moments you're most proud of about high school, your favorite class, and we make sure that we hit those themes when we're crafting our letter for you too. Teacher letters are very important, and junior year is the year that colleges like to see those letters. The letters come from junior year teachers in main subjects, so English, math, history, science, and foreign language. So those are the main subjects. So we really encourage the juniors to develop relationships with their teachers. And as Ms. Santos was saying, even now, if you're missing a recommendation or you don't understand your course recommendation, ask your teacher. So really get comfortable having that discussion between student and teacher, because junior year, you're going to want to find 2 teachers to write a letter for you. And if you're looking for summer employment, you're going to ask teachers, you're going to ask your counselor. We can provide letters to the local hospitals, to jobs. So it's really important, if you don't feel like your counselor knows who you are yet, that you drop in and make that effort also to just kind of, get to know them a little bit better as well. Experiential learning is important, especially for some particular areas. So I know, I have seniors who really want to do physical therapy. Shadowing a physical therapist has been so helpful to one of my seniors right now, and really what he learned really was incorporated into a lot of essays he had to write for DPT programs. So if you're looking for particular experience, if you can get or a particular major, if you can get experience under somebody, it's helpful for you because you really see what you're getting involved in. But also you might be able to get a recommendation from someone in the area, and that recommendation can come to us or it can go right to the college, anything like that. So that's pretty much what we want you to keep in mind for junior year. Also with clubs, I know Ms. Brown was talking about it, 9th grade, you're kind of looking at it all. 10th grade, really start focusing in. And then 11th grade, hopefully you've had a committed club that you've been in a couple years. Maybe a position of leadership, maybe not, but at least you've shown that tenure in a club. So this is another example of what a transcript at the completion of 9th grade going into 10th grade year will look like for a current 10th grader. So when that 10th grader is done, the 10th grade will be completely filled out. And then as I'm talking about junior year, that's where that last portion of the GPA is being formed. And you'll see at the bottom right, we do report on our transcript both weighted and unweighted GPAs. So, if you are taking rigorous classes, you do get a little bit of a boost. But colleges, they do get both numbers, and they're very familiar with what our school system looks like and neighboring school systems, and some of them even recalculate. So I don't really like to focus on GPA as much as just do what's right for you, build a balanced program, build a program that shows your interests and makes sense. And then when you're looking at colleges and you're looking to apply, if you're looking to apply to a specific major, it should make sense. For example, if you're going to apply to a business school and you've never taken one of our business electives, that doesn't really make sense because we have a very strong business program here. Things like that. It's kind of common sense, but we want to give that information earlier. So just to kind of round out the night, every application season, we go and we meet with colleges, or we tour colleges, and we meet with reps, and there's always, and I guess this is an industry too, right? There's always buzzwords that they're throwing out, that's the new focus. So over the years, it's been grit and resiliency, and this is what we're looking for students with this. But I think that it's helpful to see, it tends to have the same theme, right? It's about not really who's the best in everything. If everybody was the best and did everything, it would be a very boring campus. They need to have people that have strengths across the board to fill all their majors. We read reports that come through our office of of dying majors. You know, there was a time where you couldn't find anyone to teach Latin. The schools got rid of Latin, and now Latin's coming back. You know. So everything kind of goes in waves. But I think the point is, you're living a life, and if you're living a life, you're going to encounter setbacks, and you're going to encounter hiccups. And if you let that throw you, or you let that create undue anxiety because you're getting a lower grade in a hard class one year, or you don't get that title that you think you need to apply to a college, like, you're really setting unrealistic expectations for yourself. So I think it's about just kind of being in the moment, knowing that this is a lifelong learning process, and just doing the things that, like we mentioned, that bring you happiness, because that really does come through when the students write their essays, when the counselor writes the letter for you, when I read teacher anecdotes that come in from my letter that say, like, how that kid was willing to help the student next to them. It wasn't about the grade, it was about the class. Like, that stuff, we notice that as educators more, and I reflect on, like, Georgetown asked us to fill out a form. And one of the things Georgetown has, which is unique, is it says, what is this applicant's strengths? And you can check as many as you want. So it could be academics, leadership, creativity, whatever. But then there's a section, why is this applicant not well liked? And it would be like conceit, or not helping, or being like over self-indulged, so it's kind of interesting, because it's not all about, think about what you have and not what you don't have, I guess, and show what you can bring, and then that will shine through. So we kind of say, nurture your own positive self-identity and develop your own story, and as we've said multiple times tonight, that's unique for everyone. So we hope this was helpful. We just kind of wanted to give you like an overarching timeline, but we can open it to questions now if anyone has any. Yeah. So the question's about Honor Society. So in the fall of junior year, that's the first time a GPA cutoff is run. You have to qualify academically first. And once that report is run, whoever qualifies for that GPA will be invited to do an application for the Honor Society. In that application, they have to show how they fulfilled the other pillars, which is the community service requirement, also character. So by character, they ask for 2 recommendations. And that could be from teacher, it could be from counselor, stating their character and no academic dishonesty or any accounts like that. And they do write like I think 2 little blurbs. So that would be junior fall is the first induction opportunity. It's 92 on weighted now, right? 92. Used to be 95, so it was revised to 92 on weighted. And I think it's at least 40 hours, we're back to 40 hours community service completed. We did amend it during COVID, but now opportunities are out again. So, so that's just the National Honor Society. But there's also the World Language Honor Society, which has different requirements and GPA requirements. There's also the Thespian Honor Society, there's the Tri-M, there's the Science Honor Society. So there's multiple honor societies, and again, we've had students get into top schools who weren't in NHS. Sometimes they get very upset that they're not in an honor society, but it's not, again, that's not the end all be, it's not always the one distinguisher they're looking for. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, good question. So it's a 40-hour total by time of graduation. We don't require it to be like sparsed out across any years. They came up with that number because they thought if students aim to do at least 10 each year, then it was a realistic expectation on them. But we do offer, the Roslyn community offers a summer program for the younger students. And in the high school, we put out an application for people who are going to be around and want to build hours, and they can be a counselor. And they get like 60 or 80 hours just by doing the 80, right? Doing the summer program, because they're here every day working with the little kids. And a lot of our students do that and really like it, or they were themselves in the summer program when they were little, so they like to then be the like older kid who's showing the younger kids around. And then we do, so on Volunteer Access, that's the website that manages all the community service information. God bless you. On the front page, it says volunteer opportunities. Anything that's in the community that's been sent to Mr. Lazarus, our assistant principal, he will upload it on there. You can use any of those opportunities. But if there's a place you want to go to, like if your religious organization is doing something, or some of my students would go to like a camp where they were giving back, it was like a giving back camp, you can do on that website a pre-approval form. You would put the name of the organization, the manager who you're going to work under, what your responsibility will be, and Mr. Lazarus vets it. All he has to do is make sure, it cannot be a for-profit organization. He has to make sure it's a nonprofit organization. And if he approves the site, then whatever hours you do will count. Yeah. And we can help with any of that process too. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Just a logistical question. The administrators submitted their form, I think, by Thursday. Let's say we're still confused, we're evolving. What is the process? And let's say next Friday,
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is about the scheduling Google form. So the recommendations went out. As you know, there's a Google form, a self-selection form. We asked for the form to be returned because we will be meeting with them individually and we will be reviewing that form. So we just ask that you fill it out to the best of your knowledge with the information you have, and then the counselor's able to edit it. So when we talk, if they say, I put whatever, chemistry honors, but I was unsure, I was recommended for it. And as we're meeting, we're like, well, you're also gonna take this class and this might be a lot. And they decide, I'm gonna do the chem regents, we can alter it then. Even after our meeting, if they go home and then you change your mind again, they could come back in and tell us and we can edit it. We just need the form because it accelerates, the kids come down in the whole class, so we could have 8, 10 students in a class, one counselor, and it accelerates us entering the data, and then we can always edit. Does that answer the question? Okay, great. I think we had, yeah. Oh, you want to add to that? Okay.
Into the scheduling process, which again, as Mr. Tillo said, the recommendations went out. But we thought, we did this program last year in March, I want to believe, and thought it was best to do it now to help you with this next process. Because every time we said, please build your schedule appropriately, we mean that. Do not overextend yourself. Balance is important, right? We start building a schedule, a master schedule for the courses that you're going to take now, based on how many courses students stated that they wanted to take. Now, everyone self-selects into things, right? Because we kind of feel like, okay, it's like you buy that shirt from Bloomingdale's, you take it back, you try it on, you bring it back. Like that happens constantly in this education process, where it causes a problem though, because we start the school year next year saying, okay, there were, 3 sections of chemistry that we needed, but now everyone who self-selected into that chemistry class wants to drop, and they want to go into now the lower chemistry class where we only scheduled to run 2 of those sections because everyone said they wanted chem honors. That's the bigger implication to this. So when we say, yes, you can try it on, and yes, you can give yourself that opportunity, and then you're going to change your schedule, oftentimes you might get locked into not being able to change your schedule. You might be locked into having to stick into that class because we don't have room, or we haven't built a program that allows for another section because everyone is dropping. So you really have to think about that. And the other piece is that we see so many students who are trying to take everything. Mr. Tillo said it, like everyone, our kids, or Ms. Brown, we want to do it all. And you know what? We spoil you guys like that because we give you everything to do. But at the same time, as parents, we're adults, we know, even though you have, doesn't mean you have to have it, right? Think about what you're taking, because the mental health crisis that is affecting our children is real. Our children are stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, and it's all because they're trying to keep up with this craziness that is like not even a real reality, but it has become this big reality for them because they think they have to take all of these classes, they have to do all of these things, they have to compete with everyone, and then they're not ever really satisfied or happy with who they are because they're trying to be something that they're not. And it's like, all right, I took 5 honors classes and 2 AP classes and I'm 14. And I'm stressed, I'm anxious, and so what do? They call you mom, right? And then mom, who can't sit in her anxiety because he's uncomfortable, is now calling the school, and now we have a problem. No, the problem is that we should not have let him do that in the first place. We should have been more intentional about what he was going to take and the balance so that his academics are building, but his mental health is okay as well. That is incredibly important. And so we're building. When we talk about building, we really mean that word building. We're building self-esteem, we're building capacity, we're building grit, we're building rigor, we're building constantly. And so those are the things that go into this. It's just, it's so much bigger than, oh, well, I think I can do it, so I'm going to try it. Let me just try. We see the same thing with the college application process. When we get to that point, please listen to us. We are experts in the field. When we tell you, don't apply to all of those schools because, oh, well, I'm just going to see, I'm going to, take a chance. I'm going to throw it up against the wall. No. Because 1, it affects our statistics, and 2, it doesn't really feel good when those admissions decisions are coming back and you're not getting in, and then now it's like, oh my God, I'm not getting in anywhere, we're not doing well. No, it was an inappropriate application to begin with, right? So we'll build an array of schools and compile a list of things that are appropriate so that you can have a list of places to go and options where, yes, I can choose, no, I can reach a little bit, but it's still about building, it's still about balance. So I just felt like I had to say that because you really need to know that. Like, that is your experience, and that is where we can help guide you. And when you're talking to your counselors, and when the students are talking to your counselors, and we're giving you information, you don't have to go out and spend $1 million to get it from someone else who's out there who's capitalizing on the market. You have a wealth of resources here, and experts teach ranging over 100 years if we spanned and pulled all of our years of experience together that can guide you, because you're always looked at within the context of your high school. So please understand that. Now, there were 2 other questions. Can I go to those questions? Yes.
I had a question about volunteer hours. So my daughter I think I was misunderstanding it. So she does some drives and things that she runs to the dance studio where she is, but we never got those approved. I just thought it was my fault for not researching it.
She can still put them
Like,
in.
we have letters from the organizations that we work with to run those drives, so we can still...
You can still put them in and have a conversation about it with Ms. Ledger, okay? That's fine. There was someone else with a question? Yes.
There's a lot of discussion around taking courses that play to the strengths of the students, and also taking the right level of different courses, presumably so you may do well in different grades and in college and all that stuff. What would you say to a student that comes to you and wants to take some electives that are now that you perceive to be their strengths, but something that they're interested in? How would you guide them?
The same, right? It's about strengths and interests. So that's interest, right? They're going to be your 5 major subjects, which are always going to be the core. But when we said that this district has so many resources in terms of electives, take the electives. That's where you can try, right? That's where you can say, well, I don't know if I like this, but let me see. We talked about our research program, and I'll let one of the counselors talk, but we talked about the research program, we talked about the business program, but we also just built an electric car lab where students can actually build an electric car. We have an homage table for students who are interested in pre-med. We're starting a pre-vet program. We're starting, I'm sorry? We have the Bloomberg room, right? You can become certified in that. Like, there are so many things. We have a podcast room. We have a TV studio. So many things that are outside of the 5 main subjects. And those are where, yes, you should take those electives and you should push yourself in those. And I will say, we keep saying speak to your strengths. It doesn't mean that you can't challenge yourself in a weakness as well, but don't overextend yourself. That's the key. Right. Someone else, did you want to say something, Mr. Tillo?
When we went to the 8th grade, I had that very conversation because we, in the puzzle, the giant puzzle of scheduling, the main classes take priority. So we try to schedule the English, the math, the science, everything. So sometimes the electives the students want just won't fit. Because if they want to take AP Art History, it conflicts with Incubator, and so they have to make a choice. So the 8th graders coming into 9th grade, that's hard for them to understand sometimes because they feel like, I don't want to take this elective, I asked for that. You know, and they're very rigid. So we were kind of saying, keep an open mind. And one of the stories I gave was, you know, 9th graders have to have full schedules. I had a 9th grader once who had, the only elective that fit was photography. And she was like, I absolutely do not want to take this. Senior year, she was applying to photography programs. And she's like, if I wasn't forced to take that elective, I would never have thought of photography. And I'm like, it's one semester of your life. Just try it. And on the flip side, sometimes someone's like, I want crime scene investigation. I can't get in. This is what I want to do for my future. Not getting a one semester elective in high school in crime scene investigation is not going to keep you from being a forensic psychologist, you know? So they make a bigger deal. Sometimes things feel bigger than they are. And I think, you know, it's great if they want to try something out of their typical zone. We would encourage it. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. We hope that this was helpful. And again, your relationship is with your student and your counselor, and please utilize us because we're here and we work together to get them where they want to be. I hope you had a great night.